she's finished. She's going to finish up few things. Yeah. Hi, Vivek. No, we can't hear you, Vivek. No. Are you speaking something?
Hello, sir. Can you hear now?
Now I can hear you.
No, I can't hear you.
Actually, you can't hear me now. Now, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello, yeah. I can hear you, Vivek. Yeah,
Yes, I can. How are you,
perfect.
sir?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm also fine, sir.
Yes, yes.
Doing great.
Back to your department,
Good
back to your
morning.
work.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Preeti.
Hi, Solomon. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Are you in the department?
Yes, I'm in department.
Okay. Is this the museum or something? Like I.
Yeah, it is museum. Just one
Okay.
museum.
Right, right, right. Okay.
Hi, Dr. Ajay.
Your brother.
Hi.
You might be missing me a lot.
तुम्हारा भैया.
Preeti Dalal.
Yes, Dr.
How are
Ajay.
you? How are
I'm
you?
good. How are you? Just, just.
Quite interesting presentations. We have been going through all of them. So yeah, we will discuss once Karina join in, then we'll start with the discussions. We're just waiting for Karina. Abhay is also slightly busy for a couple of minutes. There are some different days celebration going on in the department. So he has been pulled by his students for photographs. So right.
Hi, Kush.
So Ashutosh is here, is it? I haven't seen him yet. Hi Ashutosh.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. I thought
Good evening.
you forgot us after reaching Delhi.
No, no, sir. I can't. I think it'll stay with me for long.
No, for some time. It's a natural process. You're at office?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm in the project room.
Okay. Good. The recording is on, by the way, okay? Just to make you aware. So because this is still a very official call because that has to go along with our other recordings. Okay, so we have Vaishnavi, Shrishti, Rama, then we have Shubham, Swanand sir is also there. Okay. Once the call starts, like I'll request all of you to put on your cameras, because- so that we bring some human touch relationship to the call. No, Siddhi, I guess, somewhere out of the department. 16, another 4 people to join us. So people in your departments, wherever you have gone back, they must have asked you, no? Like, what was this whole workshop about? Loads of questions. Is it, Dr. Ajay? Did people ask you?
Difference. That most of my friends also ask what you did there for 20 days or 14 days like that. They are asking. I told you whatever I can tell you. That's all.
Oh, good. But you told them, definitely. I'm pretty sure you must have told them something very interesting from the workshop that you have picked on.
It's very so.
Nobody is talking to nobody. Everybody seems so silent. Last week, the group was so vibrant. Nobody is saying hi to each other. Why is that so?
Sir, you said
Recording
it's
is on,
official.
sir.
You
Sorry?
said it's official.
Sorry, Ashutosh, what did you say?
You said that it's official, so that's why.
Yes.
No, it's nothing official about it. It is an official call, but you can be kind of informal, na?
Yes.
Everybody is silent, like they're just looking at each other. किसका कैमरा ऑन हो रहा है किसका बंद हो रहा है
Hi, Bhageshri. Hi, Preeti.
Hi, Ashutosh. Hi, Vivek.
Hi, Vivek.
Hi,
Hello,
Dr.
hello. Hi,
Ajay.
hi.
Hi, Vivek.
Hi, bro. Hi, Preeti.
check whether your team members are around everybody not in your team
Hello. Hi, Solomon sir.
hello is it Siddhi
Yes, sir.
okay I can't see you Siddhi okay now I can see you thank you are you in the department okay Abhay is here Abhay we can't hear you Abhay is dressed traditional today
Yes.
the traditional day
Today is our traditional day. So we are celebrating.
oh, that's good
So I've been asked to be in this dress
Dress-
for 1 hour more.
Sir, we saw your swag video.
Ah. Yeah, that is something yesterday student compelled us to do. Asked us. Public demand, the same thing.
oh, that's good hi Smriti ma'am
Yes.
you're on mute
Hi, ma'am.
Hello.
Hi, ma'am.
people from the same group are also not talking to each other see Preeti and Smriti ma'am are both are silent
Yesterday only we had a call.
oh is it
Yeah. We are still in touch.
I think Karina will join us in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, see. She has sent the message. Have you checked? Solo?
She has sent it. I checked it. I replied her. Just finishing up few things. Sakshi is not there, Abhay, or is she with you?
Sakshi is there,
Okay,
sitting beside me. So, yeah, we are projecting the screen.
right.
Hmm.
20 people. So health sciences, there are 2 logins. Yes, Karina is here, I think.
Hello.
Hi, Karina.
Hi. How are you?
Yeah, fine, Karina. Good to see you.
And you. Hello, everyone.
Hello,
Hello.
Karina.
Hello. Hello,
How are
ma'am.
you? How's
Hello, ma'am.
everything?
Hello, ma'am.
I'm just going to put this headphones on. Sorry for that. Makes it look a little strange. Nice to see you all. Let me see who's on the call.
Yes,
Perfect.
I'm here.
Excellent.
This is
Okay,
Abu.
Abba is there. Oh my goodness, what's that?
It's a Puneri Pagdi.
Oh.
Today we are celebrating our traditional day.
Oh my goodness, I thought that was a superimposition. I didn't realize you had actually had a hat on, like a cap. Amazing. I should have found something as well. I'm looking very boring. All right. Let's sorry to keep you waiting. I was just looking over the slides and just to say to everyone, yeah. So first of all, I returned safely. Everything is fine. Took me some time to get used to being back. The temperature drop was 34 degrees. Can you imagine? From 38 to 4 degrees. Like 4 degrees is freezing cold. So it's beautifully bright and sunny, but the sun is very deceptive here. As many African students here always say, the sun has no warmth in this country. So it's not really warm. But anyway, let's move on to the business today. We were so happy to receive your draft presentations. Thank you so much for doing that on time. Does everybody hear me clearly? Is the volume okay? Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. If anybody's not hearing me, okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, and there might be some people missing, right, Solomon?
Couple of them, I guess, yeah.
Okay, all right. So what we can do is just share the slides maybe later.
Right.
Okay, so what we thought we would do is that we would just remind you of the task. Solomon will share some of the positive feedback on your draft slides. Obviously, we know they're draft slides, so we know that some further work will go into it. And then I'm going to share some of our joint feedback. So all 4 of us looked through the drafts for the 4 groups. And what we wanted to make sure we didn't do is that, individually point out things that were strong or weak, because we felt it was more important to give you collective feedback, which would reflect the points that we all felt were common across the presentations, both in terms of the strong points as well as the things that could be improved. So I hope that's okay. So I'm going to share the slides, and I just want you to let me know if you can see them. Let's do that now. Just remind me where I have to share the slides from. I can't remember where. Oh yeah, here, sorry.
It's a green tab share.
Yes, got it. Okay. Is that okay? Everybody can see?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the first thing I want to say is just to remind you of the remit of the funding pitch. Okay, so this is very important, the thing that I've pulled out in the quote, which is that you are not necessarily thinking about this as a normal assignment, right? Because a normal assignment where you put together a proposal or you put together something that is intended for an academic audience is slightly different. Because you would write it in kind of slightly more, academic terms. You might use language which is a bit more understood across an audience which is familiar with the terminology. But instead, you're actually thinking about this as something that is going to come across as an exciting piece of work that should be funded. And so you've got to step out of the academic role and move into the role of pitching it as something that you really you think you're passionate about, you want this thing to be funded. So it means a slight change in terms of the tone and the overall presentation. So focus on those words: concise, compelling, cutting edge. Yeah, you've got to convince us that your work deserves funding. I wish I could fund it, but sadly, well, maybe you'll be able to use this in some other means. Okay, so just a reminder, we're looking for, in terms of the problem statement and the gap that you're trying to fill, is why does the topic matter? What gap are you trying to fill? This is very critical upfront. And then the context and the relevance. Because imagine you're dealing with assuming we're imagining a Indian funding panel, but it could be it could be an international panel. So you want to really set the tone for why this issue is of relevance for the particular context that you're speaking about, okay? Both in terms of the topic, but also in terms of the setting, yeah? So it is helpful sometimes to say that, the problem I'm looking at is globally recognized as a very critical issue. Or if you don't think it's a global issue, but it's an India-specific issue, make that very clear, yeah? But even when you're talking, for example, about health workforce issues, it's nice to have inclusion of at least a sentence which says, this is an important topic in global health because most of the world's health systems, especially in low and middle income countries, rely on community health workers or, this kind of level. So think about it, go beyond your small kind of setting, at least for the beginning, and kind of situate it, right? The research question, clear, focused, impactful. You want to defend your methodological approach. So we're going to come to some of the tips that we have for you, but we noticed that you present a methodological approach, but you don't really justify it. Yeah, most of you didn't justify it. So why is it suitable for your research question? And it might not come across in the slides, but remember that when you do the pitch, you're actually going to say, this is the approach I've chosen because X, Y, Z. I know you've only got 5 minutes, so I know that you can't go into great depth, but make sure that it comes across as the right approach to address the issue that you're looking at. And then finally, the ethical considerations. So all of you noted ethical considerations, but most of you did not note specific ethical considerations that are relevant to your topic. And so that's very, very important, right? Now, on a positive note, there were lots of very positive things for me. I was so pleased to see that the drafts reflected really good absorption of the course materials, really good grasp of the topics. It was very, very clear that you had worked, a long time intensively on these topics. And that already is reflected in terms of the quality of, both the way the topics were presented as well as the way the problem statements in most cases were developed. So I thought the problem statements were very strong. Sometimes they were a bit wordy. Wordy means, they were a bit kind of too much. You have to make them more concise, but on the whole, they were good. I also thought that you were able to adequately justify the choice of the topic. So in other words, the problem statement was strong, but also why the kind of topic was aligned with that problem statement. For the most part, you all selected appropriate evidence to make the case. In general, your questions were clear, they were well formulated, and obviously we spent a lot of time on that. Especially on the last day, we took time to go over your your questions, and I know that was a bit painful because it went well into the evening, and there was a lot of back and forth. But I think hopefully that was a useful exercise for you. In general, the methodological approach chosen was pretty well aligned with the study topic, but you'll see from our comments later that sometimes we felt that it was a little bit generic. So a lot of you used exactly the same study approaches. Most of it was all kind of mixed methods. So I think just a bit more care and a bit more distinctiveness in terms of choosing a methodology that really makes sense in line of the study topic. And I would generally argue that sometimes less is more, that you don't need to be overly ambitious in terms of the methodological approach because this is a small scale study. I thought the content of the slides was well organized. So obviously you followed a format. You didn't overload the slides in most cases, and I thought that was well done. Okay, now moving to the what can be improved. So we're essentially looking to give you some tips based on our preliminary, reviews on how we can move it from issues that we felt were a bit lackluster or a bit confused to kind of making them stronger. I'm sorry, Solomon, I meant to let you speak to
That's
this.
fine.
Did you want to say anything with respect to what else you thought was positive? I'm sorry.
Uh, okay, well, I felt that some of the problem statements were very well articulated. For the reasons like some people have really taken efforts in terms of fine-tuning their problem statements, and which is more crucial from HPSR point of view because they have also given some touch to the landscape of HPSR, or tried to bring in some keywords which fall within the premise of HPSR and the way they have linked it up. So I think like some of the presentations really shows us that strong link with the HPSR domain. Secondly, it's the use of appropriate evidence, rather than jumping directly into the identifying gaps. They have given some of the slides have very well given the statistical numbers to us, some figures in terms of like what is the proportion, what is the prevalence of certain things. That adds, I think, like more depth when it comes to funding pitch because those statistics prove that your work is more valid in one way or the other. So I think like it's a very well done effort. As you rightly said, I'm like thrilled with the amount of research questions that they have generated, and it clearly shows there are variations in the questions, some of them are explanatory, some of them are evaluative in nature, some of them are exploratory, and across all the three levels of context, like be it micro, meso, and macro. Though I saw very less questions on meso level, more on the micro level. But yes, I'm happy like there are some very interesting questions that are reflecting the macro level as well. One thing which I want to state here is like throughout our discussions in the last 2 weeks, we have been reiterating that a research question is very, very crucial. Research question is very, very important because unless you have a well formulated research question, it will be very difficult for you. Like if it is shaky in the beginning, then your entire study is going to be shaky throughout its journey, and you may land up somewhere where you don't want to. So people have really taken effort, and we invested so much time last week in fine-tuning their question. There are few who might need some more refining, but otherwise, like I think research questions are perfectly fine. Methodologically, yes, some of them are aligned with the methodological aspects. They have drawn on different methods, like people are trying to use qualitative, quantitative, and mostly people are driven by the mixed methods approach. I'm pretty sure in your points you will cover this. Like not every research question demands mixed methods research. So maybe some thought around that from your side, Karina, to them would help, I guess. And finally, I think like all of them have done a very good job in terms of organizing their slides. Of course, there is a scope for improvement, but there is a logical order in which they have arranged their slides, starting from the first slide to the last slide. They have stick to the amount of slides. We had suggested them 10 slides. So I think like that's a very good practice. They have picked it up rather than just going and telling us stories and narratives one after the other. So they have done it. Also, the use of pictures and visual smart arts and sort of thing I could see there, which bring in more clarity, from the perspective of the reader or the person who is looking at your slide. So I definitely think a well-organized presentation is very, very important, especially when it's a funding pitch. It's not just a normal presentation that you're doing, but it's a funding pitch. And within 5 minutes of time, you have to convince your funders that your study is important. So I think overall, I feel like it's good enough the way they have put in their efforts, and definitely it shows their hard work behind all this, despite the limited amount of time they had after returning back home. So yeah, I definitely think we are looking forward to a refined and revised presentations from their side. Yeah, that's it, Karan. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Solomon. I couldn't agree more. So we're going to move on to some of the specific points, and we're going to go through each section bit by bit, and we'll also give you a chance to ask questions if anything's unclear to the end. And what I would say is that we cannot offer individual level responses in this session. It's rather, we're going to keep it quite generic because I think that would be fair to everyone in the sense that it should benefit everyone. Okay, so the first point is the one that I've already made, which is that, in terms of the actual remit of this exercise, and then the kind of introductory section, title of the presentation, and so on. So just remember, this is a funding pitch. It's not an academic exercise. So look carefully at the task brief again, and the funder's instructions. I think tailor the slides accordingly. So sometimes the titles were a bit long and they weren't, they can be punchier in general. They can, they can be a little bit more compelling. They don't have to be academic. The slides in general have to be less text, ideally, more visuals and stronger statements. So sometimes they drag on a little bit because there's just too much text there. And remember, when you've got 5 minutes, you don't expect that the audience is going to sit there and read through your slide, right? And you also don't want to get yourself into a situation where you are rushing through text and end up reading kind of what's on the slide. You need to have a prepared presentation, and the slides need to underpin what you're saying, but they don't have to be exactly, they don't have to replicate exactly what you say, if you see what I mean. They should be a summarized version of what you're saying, but really ideally compressed in such a manner that is visually attractive and certainly aligned with the main content of your presentation. Introduce the topic and yourself. Some presentations had the title on a separate slide rather than on the main title slide. So I think your title slide, just keep that clear: study title, name and affiliation, logo that was shared with you. And most of you did that, but for those that have done it differently, this is what we would suggest. On to the problem statement and the gap. I think generally we did say that we thought the problem statements, many of them were good, but I think sometimes they can be a bit stronger in terms of the formulation. Like, it takes a little bit of time to get to the problem statement. And I think you just need to be, given that you've only got 5 minutes and this might take, 20 seconds, you need to do that in a more quick manner. Refer to those handouts. So we said, start with a hook. Open with a compelling statistic, a question, or a very short anecdote that immediately highlights why this thing is urgent, why this is relevant. Make the audience care. Yeah. Be clear about the gap that you're filling. So I saw some in the group that I reviewed, I saw some really nice examples where the gap was very clearly identified. And try to be specific if you can. I know this, you might say, well, it's only since 2 weeks that I started working on this topic, so this is a bit challenging for me. But here, please try to make reference to the literature, or try to situate it so that the topic is presented in a way that suggests either this is very timely, in other words, there has been a really recent initiative and this is the right moment to explore this question, or you say there has been a lot of literature on blah 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 XYZ, but this is the gap that's missing. Or you can also make reference to your conceptual framework. Now, the question is, do we feature the conceptual framework in this presentation? Probably not, because that in itself would be overwhelming, right? Would be absolutely overwhelming for an audience to take in. But you did the work of putting together a conceptual framework, and thus you are quite aware of, what in your conceptual framework has already been covered by the literature, or the existing literature. And therefore you can say, having undertaken having undertaken a scoping exercise to to understand the extent of studies on this topic, I noted that there is not much on X. And then again, you can make it clear that the gap you're filling is either India specific or it's a gap that is internationally recognized. In terms of the health policy and systems background, I think this is where some of the drafts I saw were weaker, I would say. It wasn't completely clear why this was a health policy or systems topic. So in the background sections, they're sometimes a bit too generic, which means they're too general and they're missing the connection to the core problem statement. So you need a clear link between the problem and why this is a health policy or systems issue. So one suggestion from one of us was that you could link back to the building blocks. You could say, this is specific to quality of care, which is, an essential goal of the health system, or this is about the health workforce, which is obviously the backbone of the system. Okay, that immediately establishes the link to HPSR. Or you could be speaking about the relevant health policies, which help to contextualize the research. Okay, so onto the conceptual framework. So one comment from one of us was where these were. I personally don't think they should be included in these presentations because I think they would just take far too much time. And the last thing you would want to do is, if this was a real presentation, you would not want to overwhelm the audience with a massive diagram that they're trying to navigate while you're speaking. That doesn't make sense, right? But you can recall the fact that you did work through this, because I think it's for me, if I'm listening to a funding pitch, it is very strong if somebody says, thinking about conceptualizing this problem from an HPSR point of view, there are X, Y, Z angles that we could take. However, I honed down on this topic because whatever. So this is a way you could make a reference that might support your problem statement. I'll just pause there. And Solomon or Abai, any additional points on these parts so far?
No, nothing from my side. Solomon, if you can.
No, that's fine. The only concern we had, definitely this is a funding pitch, so conceptual frameworks may not be the right fit on the slide. But if at all given a scope, like in some other academic presentation, they can use conceptual frameworks, and then just maybe focus only on the level where they are kind of their research question is talking about, be it micro meso, would be another way of looking at it, but not definitely for this presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, on the research questions, we thought some were well formulated, as we already said, while others might need a little refinement still. Always consider the level of analysis, macro, meso, micro, and ensure what you're trying to do with this question. Are you exploring? Are you explaining? Are you describing? And as such, that sometimes helps you use the correct verb, in terms of the question. So, that's probably more relevant when you're formulating as a research objective, because you could say to explore, to explain, to describe, to elucidate. Whereas in a question, you're formulating it slightly differently. But I think what's very important is that if the question is explanatory or evaluative, usually you are looking at the impact of something on something else, or you are saying, given this policy, how effective has this been in attaining this goal, etc. Because you're looking at it from a reference point or a normative standpoint, i.e., this is the ideal, and I am looking at to the extent to which the current situation is attaining this particular norm in the health system or this particular policy goal. So on the whole, I won't spend much time on this because we have, as Solomon already said, we spent a lot of time on formulating the questions. I think for the most part, they're quite good. I've got 3 slides on methodology. The first one is on study designs and sampling. So we didn't speak a lot about sampling, so I don't think I would expect to see a very fancy or sophisticated sampling design here. But I think you could give a bit more thought to, the study design. And the reason is that there were a lot of people who just sort of said mixed methods automatically. And the question there was, is that required for your specific research question? Or was this something that was consensus within the group that mixed method design was, automatically can't really decide what, so therefore I'll go for mixed methods. So I just want to say, you don't have to have a mixed methods design, right? You could have a cross-sectional survey. It's a valid design, a survey design to answer a particular question. or you could have a longitudinal qualitative study. But remember to be specific about the design, okay? So not only should it match your study objectives, but saying qualitative research is not a design. That's not a design, okay? So review the lecture notes for the criteria. Remember, we had criteria around, is it observational? Is it experimental? Is it short term? So cross-sectional, are you capturing a moment in time? Or are you actually going to go back and look at something over time, which means it would be a more longitudinal kind of study? And then we also said something about fixed versus flexible. So just remember those different criteria and try to be a bit more specific in terms of how you choose and how you defend your study design. The justification of the methodological choices should be there. And again, I know it's only 5 minutes. You don't really have much space to do this. But I think being able to say, we've chosen a qualitative cross-sectional design here because this is the best approach to understand in depth how people's experiences with this new initiative have been, for example, right? So defend the choice of quantitative versus qualitative, defend the choice of, cross-sectional versus a longer term, before, after, whatever. So another comment from one of us was that studies proposed at the meso level could connect with the macro and the micro level in order to triangulate data, okay, and to increase kind of the validity of results. So in other words, even if you pitch the study at the meso level, you potentially, if you are doing a mixed method study, could consider that there may be macro or micro level actors that you might want to include in the study. But I would say for the most part, keep it simpler rather than overcomplicating it with too many methods. Because again, small scale study, we didn't specify time, but I'm making this up now, but these are studies that are mid-range, can be completed within 9 months. Effectively the funding would be probably the equivalent of, I don't know, 100,000, 150,000 pounds. So whatever that is in rupees, I guess that's 1 lakh, isn't it? About. So in terms of sampling designs, as I said, I'm not expecting sophisticated things here because we didn't cover it, basically. I note the comment that somebody said multi-stage sampling could be explored, and most appear to be single institution-based studies. So maybe Abhay or Solomon, you could just comment on that because I think that comes from one of you, probably.
Yeah. So what we are expecting here that sometimes, okay, it is your research question. It should drive, okay, your design also. So, and sometimes if you consider a kind of a big country like India, if district you are considering, and in that district, if you are going to consider rural blocks, primary health centers, okay, and in those primary health centers, some of health and wellness centers. So, in that sequence, if you have to go, then perhaps you really need to try to give a kind of you can opt for this multi-stage sampling kind of approach, and you can try to actually still try to justify why you are, suppose you are selecting just two kind of a sites. Okay. So likewise, rural blocks, urban blocks, remotely located, closely located kind of a PSC or health and wellness centers. So that all requires this kind of a multi-stage kind of a design and the kind of a justification of why you are selecting, okay, these particular institutions for study. Rather than doing or restricting your study to just one health and wellness center will not yield you much of the information.
Unless you choose a design that is aligned with that approach. So if you say, I'm using a case study design, my case study is, remember that case study is not the geographic location. Okay, so look up the criteria for case study design. But in that case, it might be justified to focus on just 2 or 4 or whatever, 8 facilities, because you're using a design that allows you to do that. But as Abhay said, you don't have to go into great depth about the actual numbers, but you do have to justify the sampling approach in relation to the design. Okay. Okay, the next thing is around study population and sort of the general methodological approach. So we felt that some proposals were a little bit too ambitious and trying to engage too many stakeholders. So just look back at that and think carefully. Sometimes you don't need so many methods. I mean, a justification for using multiple methods is if you are trying to triangulate or if you think really that you need to capture perspectives both from different levels of stakeholders and why that's useful, but always try to think, what is the rationale? Why am I doing this? Because often we see that in studies that have too many methods and too many stakeholders is you end up with vast amounts of data, and it's very difficult to bring the data together later. One thing that was noted in one of the groups is that in some cases the study population wasn't actually defined. So remember to do that. Use the case study discussions from the classroom to try to refine the study population. So obviously in each of your case studies, you thought carefully about, we did the exercise, you mapped the stakeholders, you mapped the different kinds of actors. So try to make that reflect that a bit more in the presentation. On to the sort of methodological approach. Sorry, this point should be on the next slide. But this is already, think carefully about the types of interviews. So just remember what we said about key informant versus regular informants, what you can do with a survey questionnaire, what is the point of a focus group discussion or any kind of collective group discussion, and always think, why am I using this? What does a focus group aim for rather than a regular interview? Okay, it's a very different type of information. Is you're looking for collective consensus type information in a group discussion. Sometimes we saw a mismatch between the methodological paradigm and the participants chosen. So make sure that there's alignment between the research question and the respondent selection. So in other words, when you, just be aware that everything needs to be consistent. So down to the details of, who are these participants really the people who can best answer the question, the aspects of the question that I've selected. Okay, so this is on to methods of data collection and analysis. Make sure the methods are well aligned with your study question. Sorry, this is repeating from the last slide because I didn't separate it adequately. Think carefully about the types of interviews and interviewees. And be careful, don't refer to methodological or analytical approaches if you're not fully confident about what they mean. I would prefer you leave them aside. Keep it simple, reflect what you're confident in and what you learned. So I noticed some people put in things about analytical techniques, grounded theory, or they put something in about even more sophisticated ones. Or they suggested statistical using a statistical software to analyze qualitative interviews. So just avoid that. If you're not confident about analysis, just leave it. It's not really required for the funding pitch, to be honest. If you are, and it's not where you're not going to get extra points for. Let's put it this way: you won't get extra points for adding in a section on analysis. But if you know something about analysis and you're confident about it, there's nothing against putting in a line, but it's not part of this pitch specifically. Solomon, anything to add on that?
No, Karina, that's fine.
Okay. Ethical considerations. So this was actually where I felt a little tiny bit disappointed because I felt that we actually did spend a lot of time on that last day talking about the everyday ethics. And I know that, when you only have one slide, you don't have time to go into all the possible ethical dilemmas that might arise. But I do want you to make sure that your ethics is not just saying we will take consent and we will, make sure this information is kept confidential, because that is general. That is an ethics board, of course, is going to ensure that you do that. But I want you to be specific about what your topic raises in terms of ethical challenges, whether it's around power dynamics, whether it's around specific vulnerable groups, whether it's around, potential potential skewing of interests or conflicts of interests. Try to reflect a little bit more on, as I said, the kind of the specificity of your topic and the ethical and both the kind of in terms of the ethical principles that Abai presented to you, but make it specific to the topic as well as the kind of dilemmas that arise in the context of your data collection. Okay. These are just overall presentation pointers. So there's issues around language, visual appeal, and referencing. So this is just, it's a little bit random, but spell out acronyms. So especially if you're using them the first time, don't assume that people know what they mean. I found a couple of acronyms that I had forgotten what they mean. So make sure that you spell them out. Be more precise in the use of terms. So this goes back to the research questions. Sometimes you use words a little bit loosely. Okay, you'll say, how does workload affect this? Workload of whom? Yeah. Or what is the understanding of X? So understanding is also not a very precise term. So try to think about using a term that is that somebody can look at and say, okay, I understand how they will operationalize this. In other words, they look at the term and they say, okay, this makes sense because in terms of understanding, they mean knowledge, they mean decision making, they mean this or whatever. And this is how they're going to measure this, or this is how they're going to assess it. So avoid vague terms, okay? In general, some of you were very good about kind of keeping less text on your slides, but some of you had really overloaded your slides. So please keep less text on your slides. Keep to strong bullet points. I know this was drafts, okay, so it's absolutely no issue. But in general, remember that you are speaking the pitch, okay? So the person should not have to read a novel on the screen, right? They should look at the screen and they should hear what is on the screen in terms of your presentation, but you use that long text for your presentation script, yeah? And then your text on your slides should be short, to the point, and really not necessarily in full sentences. You do not need full sentences, okay? It's bullet points, which means the key concepts are on the slide. Also think of other ways of presenting the information. So you don't have to put everything in text. You can use small graphs, you can use diagrams, you can use a photograph, as long as the photograph respects kind of basic principles of ethics. Don't show people's faces. Don't use images that are not licensed, Creative Commons licensing. You're able to find images that are actually acceptable to include in your presentation. You can use a small bar chart, you can use some sort of table, but think a bit more creatively about how to present your information. You can use, whatever's within PowerPoint itself. So on the referencing, this was noted by my colleagues. Either sometimes the references weren't provided, or where they were provided, they weren't standardized. So you need to stick to one citation style. And sometimes it's helpful to use a bibliography management software, and that might help you sort of get everything into one style. Although this isn't necessarily required for this particular presentation because you've only got 3 to 5 references, but just make sure they're standardized and show a nice mix. At least have at least in 5 references you should have 2 to 3 academic references. So the references should be robust, yeah, because you're trying to present this topic as being, a topic of scientific relevance, as well as applied relevance, and you want to make sure that that's grounded in the references that you're providing. ResearchGate is not a reference, so just make sure that your references are proper, yeah. So they are, they're adequate in terms of where you're sourcing them and how you evidence them. I think that was all on the. Anything else, Abai or Solomon, in terms of the visual appeal that you would suggest?
I think you have fairly covered everything, Karina.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, ChatGPT. We did notice where you use ChatGPT. I mean, it's interesting, right? We're all using it. Of course we are. It makes our life easier in some ways. But remember that because we're all using it, it's also instantly recognizable when it's being used. All right. So in some ways, it's great because it helps you improve your formulation, your use of language. It really helps you structure things. But generally, for something like this, I think we would discourage it because I think all of you are very capable, actually, and you've done, so much work. And I certainly wouldn't mark you down for language, which doesn't, isn't quite perfect in terms of academic English. I think it's still helpful. So I think you can use it to structure your presentation, for example, but please avoid copying word for word. Yeah, make the presentation your own. I think that's when I was looking at the presentations I reviewed, I mean, there were one or two which were just shining through because you could see the person behind the presentation. I could see the person. And I don't know how to describe it, but there's something about the style, there's something about the yeah, it is actually the style and even the wording. And I prefer a presentation that reflects personality rather than is kind of bland because, if we all use ChatGPT, unfortunately, everything is going to become very homogeneous. So bring out your personality a little bit in the presentation where it's possible. Solomon and Abba, anything?
Completely agree on this.
Okay. Great. Okay. So now the last point is, sorry, this should have actually happened before the ChatGPT discussion, but we noticed that some of you ended just literally on ethics. And what I would suggest is that you do have, if you have space, is end and it doesn't even remember that your presentation is 5 minutes, but you can still have a slide with a strong image or a strong conclusion. Because imagine if you were standing in front of the funding board, it would be strange to kind of end on, and I will be taking consent, etc., etc. And then you say, thank you. You want to end by saying, let me remind you why this topic is important. So you might not be saying, let me remind you, but you're doing that through a slide, which again, maybe it's a statistic. Doesn't have to be the same thing as you started with. But by the end of this presentation, the audience, in this case, us, we should be really on board in terms of the topic. Yeah. All right, we're going to stop there. Maybe we can bring everybody back on the screen, and then we can give you a chance to ask us questions. So I think if you can just raise your hand, if you've got a specific question, or if you didn't understand anything, please don't feel shy because we won't have another chance to do it. So we've got about 7 or 8 minutes to do that if you had questions now.
Maybe we can request people to switch on their videos if they can for a minute or so.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead with Vivek. Go ahead.
Ma'am, do we need to ask how much fund we want and all these things?
No, I
No.
don't think so. I mean, that would have mean putting together a budget, which is not something we covered. I agree it would be an important point later.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's a whole other exercise. But if it's something that people are interested in, we can look for materials to support that. How do you translate research activities into budgetary spreadsheets? But you don't need to include that here. That's fine.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
I'm here, Ashutosh.
Oh, Ashutosh, sorry, I can't see you. There you go. Okay, go ahead.
So my question is, since it's a funding pitch only, so in our presentation, we did mention about the theoretical framework. So that should be part of a presentation, or it's not that mandatory since it is not an academic work?
I think it depends on the topic. If the topic is, most of these topics are very applied, right? So theory is different than a conceptual framework. Conceptual framework is a way of moving from a problem analysis to a basic understanding of what's going on and why it's happening. Yeah. But if you felt, for example, if there was anyone amongst you who said, actually, this research topic is driven by a strong belief that there is, as I said, it is driven by an activist paradigm or driven by an agenda which is, strongly influenced by a theoretical position, a feminist agenda or a Marxist, whatever the thing is, then I don't see any harm in mentioning that. Because I think that becomes part of your problem statement. You can say this issue of whatever it is has been looked at through this, and this kind of lens. However, no one has really paid attention to the gendered aspects of this. Yeah. And that's where you would bring a kind of consideration of why a theoretical influence might be important, because it'll shape your question as well. Anything else? Don't be shy. It'll be nice to hear your voices anyway. So
Ma'am,
go
I have
ahead.
one query.
Yes.
So, in our presentation, are we expected to explain what kind of question we have chosen, like meso level, macro level, or it should be self-explanatory?
I think it should be self-explanatory because remember, it's not academic. Yeah. So I think it's important that there's consistency. So if your research question is meso level, make sure that everything else is pitched accordingly. But you're not going to explain to the funder that, oh, sir, I've chosen a meso level because this is how we learned about that. That's not of interest to them. All right. I think what you can do is in terms of the way you articulate the problem is that you say, people have looked at policies, people have looked at perceptions, but rarely have we looked at the level of service delivery organization, the organization of care. And that automatically is telling people that you're situating at the meso level without,
Thank
okay,
you.
so think about it in terms of where's the gap. Okay.
Like ma'am, in the presentation just now, you just said that even if whatever level it would be, but you can triangulate it, you can go up to micro or you can go to meso level also. Can you just give us an example that my research question is this, how can I triangulate and going to the micro and then a meso level?
So if you said, because you could have a research question which could be addressed at both levels, right? Your question is broad enough to say that the perspectives of both managers as well as health workers are relevant, for example, to understanding how workload impacts on productivity, for example. And therefore you say, in this case, I'm triangulating the views of X and Y. And that's automatically, in some ways, sorry, those are both micro level, right? Because you're looking at managers and health workers' perspectives. But let's say you triangulated those interviews with observations of everyday work practices in X facility. That would be a meso level method, a method that's pitched at the meso level. Solomon, anything to add?
No, I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. You're looking all a bit nervous. Why is that? Is it stressful? Okay, it shouldn't be stressful. Okay, you've done extremely well so far already. I don't know how the little quiz went. I hope it wasn't too painful. But I'm not particularly worried that there's going to be any issues. I think we would highlight that if we felt there were any big glaring issues. But you would have seen that the comments. We tried to get comments from all four of us to help you as much as we could, but there's nothing glaring. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
1 more minute left. Abhay, do you want to say anything?
No, I just want for actually my documentation purpose, I want everyone to switch on their videos because I have to take one picture. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, this is for report purpose because we said that we are conducting blended mode.
Feedback session.
So
Yeah,
please, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
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 So
Good
please
idea.
switch on. Yeah, please switch on your videos. So we'll
And
go to.
ideally, this is our last session as a group. So
Yeah, we'll be putting in the gallery mode. Priyanka, Shivani, I know you are there.
yes, Priyanka is there. Shivani,
Yes,
great.
all
I'm
of
not
you are
sure.
in good saris. I also know.
Yes, I know. It's not like at least on our side. Oh no, you guys, it's already afternoon, but it's always those calls where people were still in their pajamas was always a bit difficult. But we always
Abhay, your
made sure that
camera
the
is
top
off.
half was presentable.
Yes, I am also
Okay,
there.
brilliant.
I think Mayuri.
Yes.
Somebody.
Mayuri,
Okay,
I think she doesn't have camera. Okay.
okay, no worries.
Okay, fine.
All right. Okay. It's good. So I think just maybe Abhay or Solomon, you can say something in terms of timing when people would get feedback on the different things that they've submitted.
Yeah, Abhay, I think you can go ahead with this.
Yes, earlier the better. That is what I could say. But yes, try to keep in the perspective all the suggestions and comments and tips what we have given it. And we are expecting you to get back to us on Friday, 1300 hours. That is in the afternoon. With your final pitch, 5 minutes, and all the kind of a guidelines which already been circulated. That will enable us to close this course in this week itself and share the report with GAM authorities.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to remind you that the pitch means that you need to, and I'm not sure we said this specifically, but it means that it's a recorded pitch, right?
Yes.
So that means that you're actually speaking for the 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And so remember that you can say quite a lot. Try not to rush through, even if better to practice it a few times so that you have it at 5 minutes flat. Because there's nothing worse than ending up kind of reading through, too many slides. So keep your slide number is perfect at the moment. You can reduce some of the text, but you should be speaking at, roughly this pace, not so much faster. Okay. And for those of you who, struggle with kind of speaking kind of English on an everyday basis, just practice it. And it certainly will not be something that I would take any points off on. I don't anticipate. I already think it's amazing that you're, doing as much as you are in a language that's not necessarily one spoken every day. So, what was the other thing? Yes, in terms of returning feedback to you, I'm committed to getting the feedback on the conceptual frameworks and the research questions to you probably later today. And I'm not sure how that is administered within by Abhay and Solomon, but normally, if that's of help to you, you would have that by the end of the day. We would send that to you. That's obviously the group level assignment. The exam, I don't know, Solomon, what you've done with that.
Yeah, I have
The
checked
quiz.
the paper.
Okay.
So he is smiling. So he is saying it all.
Okay, so don't worry. Okay, don't worry. Like I've checked the papers and like surprisingly they are good. Okay. So I think like we were more worried than the participants about the exams, but they have fairly done very well in the exams.
Okay, great.
So
okay. And this last assignment, this pitch, I think normally, given that you're submitting on Friday, I would hope within a week, but maximally 10 days. I would say realistic is probably 10 days to get some feedback. And usually we do certainly the way I teach the course is I offer quite comprehensive feedback. So it's not just going to be a number, because I think it's useful as a learning exercise that you get some concrete suggestions back. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll close there. Lovely to see you again, and I hope that you stay in touch. You have hopefully you have my email through. If not, Solomon and Abba can share that. Yeah, please do get in touch if you've individually got any queries. Obviously, not about the assignment, but anything else. I'm always happy to respond and to hear from you. That would be really nice.
Oh,
Okay, great.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Bye bye and all the best.
Stay well. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you,
Ma'am has
ma'am.
already left.